Okay, if I come back to watch, this is what we have here. All right, this is this index.html. The last item we have here is this button, right, of submit. So let's introduce a table. Okay, in fact, after these flip-flops here, that's before the copyright. Okay, let's say before the heading 1, let's insert a table before the heading 1, okay? Now, for you to be able to insert a table, you use the table elements, all right? You know that tables are in rows and columns, right? Okay, for us to really understand better, let me just open Microsoft Word and illustrate something for us so that we can appreciate it better. Okay, so this is Microsoft Word now. In this application, my bro, are we together? Are you writing an online exam? Okay, so if I want to insert a table now, okay, let me say customer details. Oops. Let me increase the size of this thing. All right, so I want to insert a customer details table. This is Microsoft Word. So please, I want you guys to help me. What are some of the details you can take from a customer? Okay. Okay. Age. This is your customer. Okay. Address, phone number. Let's say email now. Email, right? Okay, cool. So give me some dummy names. Let's just input them. Huh? Okay. Richard, is it a dummy name? We have Richard here. Okay, address. Okay. Phone. Email. Richard@example.com. Okay, so the next person. All right, we have Emeka. Number what? Lagos Street. And we have Emeka at example.com. Let's take another person. Florence. Number 10 what? Oh, Ibadan Road. Okay. Florence at example.com. All right, so I want to illustrate the concept of table. That is why I inserted a table from MS Word here, so that we get a gist of how the table actually works in HTML. Okay, so now this is my table heading, right? Sure? Currently, there is no difference between the table heading and the table data, right? Are we together? So this is row 1, this is row 2, this is row 3, and this is row what? 4. Cool. This is table, this is column 1, right? Column 1, column 2, column 3, and what? Column what? 4. Cool. So now let me show us something. If I come to this borders and shading, and I come to so I don't need the inner borders actually. Nice. So I want to change the color now to red and click OK. Thought I changed that into red. It didn't reflect. Okay, I needed to click it twice before it will reflect. Please, let's just follow what I'm doing. It's very important for us to understand very well. Now watch. All right. So we can see that we have this thing that has a red border, right? Now in HTML, that thing corresponds to your table tag. Are we together? That's your table tag. Now you see this row. Let me give it a shading. Let me give it a shade of, let's give it this shade. Cool. All right. This is your first row, okay? This corresponds to HTML table row, okay? Now, if you were writing this thing in HTML, this is what you will have. This is the table tag. It corresponds to that red box. Are we together? So this table tag now corresponds to that red box. I'm going to have a table row, okay, which corresponds to the first row. Are we together? The very first row in your HTML table. Now, since I want this first row to be my heading, okay, I'm going to use a table heading tag, all right? So I'll have a table head like this, and what we have there, we have name, address, phone number, and email, right? So I'll copy this as my table heading, and I will duplicate them into 4 places. All right, so the first thing I have there is my name, right? The next thing I have there is address. The next thing I have is phone number, and the next thing I have is email. So I have succeeded in adding a table head to my data. So this is my first table row, all right? With how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4. So your table head indicates your columns. Are we together? While your TR, your table row, indicates your rows. So now if I want to insert the next row, where I now have the data itself, all right? The table data. So equivalent to what I have here, almost the same. I will copy this and I will just paste it here. Now, instead of table head comes pre-formatted with a bold text indicating that it's actually the head of your table. Are we together? So it's now going to be table data instead of table head. So you are going to give it table data, table data, table data, table data, table data, and table data. All right, so now you can now fill in the values. We have Richard Owalaka Street. So this is your first column, which corresponds to your table data of your first column. So we'll have Richard, and we know that this next column is supposed to be the address, right? Number 1 Owalaka Street, and the phone number can be whatever it is there. Let's just copy the phone number and put it here. Oops. All right, so all right, and email is richard@example.com. So this code now will just give you exactly this stuff. It will give you name, address, phone number, email, and then for the table data, it will now give you Richard number. So let's see. This is exactly how HTML tables work. So let's insert a HTML table to this our document. So I'm going to be inserting it. Where do I insert it? All right, let me just insert it here after the footer. Cool. So let's go back to our page and let's see what we have. Do you see? Are we together? So you now you now understand how tables work in HTML. It's as simple as that. All right. So that is what HTML tables is all about. If I want to insert another row, the same way I just did this stuff, copy it and then paste it. Now, for consistency's sake, know that your table data, the number of columns you have, should equal to the first one. Like you have 4 columns, right, as your headings, right? So it's not proper for you to now have like 5 columns as your data. Exactly. So the next data we had here was Emeka, number 1 Lagos Street. So just the same way, you just add Emeka, number 1 Lagos Street. All right. So Emeka at example.com. If we go back to so it has inserted the next yeah, it has actually inserted the next data. So that's just how HTML tables work. All right. So today we are going to be looking at, like I said, CSS, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Okay, if you want to insert the audio or video element, just go and find out how to do that. I don't know how to insert it, so go and find it out. You use the audio and video tag, okay? Exactly. And you use the source tag as well with a source attribute to be able to insert it. Now, let me give you an instance. I'm very serious when I said I don't know how to insert it. Like, it sounds funny, right? It sounds funny, right? Eh? Yes, I want you to believe me. Why? Because it is possible that I can forget some of these things. Do you get? Now, I want to teach you the approach you are supposed to use. All right? Now, let's assume that I don't know how to insert. I don't know if there is no network in this place. Let's assume I don't know how to insert a video element, right? So I will just type in Google how to insert video in HTML, and I will try to find out how to do that. Let me try and connect to my router. I don't know if there is network. I doubt if there is network. Thing is shining red. Okay, thank God it's opening. Okay, so you can see the first link I have here is a W3 Schools link. Oh, cool. This is nice. All right, so HTML video. All right, so you can see. Now, if you click on this, try it yourself. This is the best way to go about this thing. Now, in your project, you are thinking of, okay, I want to insert a video in this project, right? So, by default now, you shouldn't know how to do it. You just need to find out how to do it. And as often as you make use of it, you can now start remembering it subconsciously. So, I will click on try it myself. Fine, look at how to insert it. Like I told you, you use a video element. Can you see? Oh, wait. It's very down. Okay. So look at it here. You use a video element with a width. Okay, those ones. Just the element there is video. Now, inside that video, you have a source element. Okay? A source element with a source attribute, SRC. Okay? And you have to also specify the type. From here now, they are saying that your video type is an MP4 type. Are we together? This type attribute is specifying that this video you are you're uploading is an MP4 type. Okay. Now this is source. What's this one? OGG. Your browser does not support HTML video. Okay. So basically, this is how you insert a video in HTML. So what I'll do is I'll copy this thing. All right. You can see that this video tag has an opening and ending tag. The source tag does not have it. If you click on this, it's actually playing the video. Now watch. If I remove these controls, if I remove these controls now and run this thing, you will not be able to control this thing again. Did you see? Those options for you to play drag back and drag forward is no longer there. So it's just as good as this is just an image. Without these controls attributes, you will not be able to control that HTML. So if I put back that controls and run it again, fine. Do you see now? We now have this ability to control this video. It's as simple as that. That's how you insert a that's how you insert a video in HTML. Do you see that? There's no point for you to, at this initial stage, bother yourself so much about how to remember all these things. Do you get? Why? Because the documentation is there for you. It's just with time. Over time, when you make use of these things, you'll be able to recall subconsciously, okay, this is how to do it. You understand? But what I expect you to know is, as you have this stuff now, you are supposed to know, okay, what's this width attribute? Okay, let me ask this question. This width attribute, what is it doing there? Huh? Exactly. It is controlling the width of the video, right? Now, the next thing we have there is controls. Like I just explained, that controls is for that control there. And now, this source, what is this source attribute? Exactly, the source of the video. So it's just as simple as that. If I copy this code here, let me say I don't want to remember it. Let me just copy. I don't want to stress myself. And I go back to index.html. After my table, I will just insert this stuff and add a closing video. Cool. Now this thing will not play because I don't have this video here. I don't have it in this HTML basics. So let me check if I have a video any video element. Let me check if I do have one. Okay, I think it should be under videos and capture. Yeah, screen record. Okay, so this is an MP4 video. Let me check the property of this. 33 MB. That's a whole lot of MB. Let me just copy it and come back to my HTML basics folder. Okay, see it here. Thank God. So I'll just paste it here. Okay. Let me go back to my VS Code. This will use more of BB, whatever. I could just rename my own as video 1. Now remember, if I'm doing video 1, it means I'm supposed to rename this stuff to video 1 too, right? So that to be able to find it, video 1.mp4. So it's actually an mp4 file. Okay. Now, where is my index of HTML? So this thing is supposed to show with a width of 400 and with controls. Let's go back to our HTML. And where is our live server? Okay, so cool. Look at it. It's already there. Can you see? I can play the video. How's my project work? Okay, so you can see that it's Now, let me tell you people something. You can, right now, you have the liberty to build whatever you want to build. Like, nothing is stopping you. Why? Because you now understand how the whole stuff works. You get? So all you just need to do is to make your research and find your way around what you want to build. Now, by the time we are done learning CSS, you discover that you must have been armed with a whole lot of information to build anything as dynamic as possible as you want to build. Whatever you wish to build, you can actually build it. Okay? So right now, we've exhausted everything about HTML. There is nothing else in HTML. All the tags, at least you have an idea of what they are and how they work. So it is just about, okay, what do I want to build? What are the things I need? And how do I go about them? You just go ahead and research and find out what you want for yourself. Are we together? So that's it. Okay. Yeah, it's compulsory, just like we did for that picture with the alt attribute, just in case it doesn't work. You understand? Just in case, like, your network does not. Look at this second stuff now. I believe this second stuff is just saying, in case your video is not able to play this video, then it will display this text. Your browser does not support HTML videos. Do you get? So it's just like the alt attribute for images. All right? So it's as simple as that. So let's continue. Okay, we've shortened our time. We now have 2 hours left. So what is CSS? Like I said, CSS means cascading style sheet. That's the first thing you should know. And I said that CSS is used for styling web pages or HTML elements. There are 3 ways of applying CSS, and that is inline, internal, and external CSS. All right? So, and also we have CSS selectors. There are 4, practically 5 ways of. We can select by the element name. We can as well select by the class name, the ID, and the end child. Now, I want to ask a question. I gave us an assignment. I said we should research about 20 different HTML attributes. How many of us did that? Okay, at least, thank God, a good number of us did it. Now, while you were researching those attributes, did you come across the ID and class attributes? Did you see anything like that? The ID and class attribute, right? Okay, thank God that you saw it. So we are going to be doing ID, and so we are going to be making use of that attribute that you just found out. Okay? So I created a page here called portfolio clone.html. I'm going to delete everything that is inside it. Which is actually this web page right here. So I was just using it to kind of illustrate what we are going to be building today. Oops. All right. So let me just delete everything I have in this portfolio. I wrote a good number of things inside here, but I'm going to delete them. So we are starting on a blank sheet. Cool. So you can see that the portfolio.html is empty. Okay. So basically we are going to be learning CSS. Now in VS Code there is a shortcut. There is a short form. There is a shortcut for you to get a HTML template. It's called HTML boilerplate. Once you press Shift 1, and it shows that thing, you hit Enter. It will just provide for you the basic boilerplate that you need for you to start working. Okay, you typed it on your own, it didn't work. Shift 1, yeah. Is it? Did you type it now? It did not work. Okay, so if it doesn't work, then you need to install the extension because it's actually an extension that makes that thing to work. Okay, so there is actually an extension that gives you that ability. I think it's HTML boilerplate or something. You can always find out. Right now, I don't remember the particular extension it is. I have a whole lot of extensions installed in this my VS Code. Did it work? Don't worry. If you do it on your own and it doesn't work, research how to install, or you can just find out the VS Code extension for HTML boilerplate. You can just search it out. You can search it on Google. VS Code extension for HTML boilerplate. Alright. So if you research, it will show you the particular one you should download. And how okay, I think it's Emmet or something. Okay. Yeah, there are a good number of extensions there that can help you. I think the one that is doing that is the Emmet or something. I saw something like that. Okay. Wait, I think at the beginning of this my extensions. Okay, there's this one. VS Code HTML CSS ECML is an extension too. Okay, let's look at the features. Oops. Okay, or once you type here boilerplate HTML boilerplates, look at it. There are a whole lot of them. There are a whole lot of HTML boilerplates. Huh? Okay, it worked. Did you install that one? Okay, so this is the shift 1 that you did and it worked. Alright. So it's as good as that. It's just a way of saving yourself the stress of typing doctype, HTML, lang, and all the rest. So let's continue. Remember, I wiped everything that is on that page. We have a blank page here. So let me just insert some elements. I'll have a nav. Alright, so I want to have a nav, and inside this nav, I want to have a home, and about, a contact, a blog section. Okay, so let me give my necessary attributes, the index.html, about href, about.html, href, contact.html, and href blog.html. Okay, so if I come back to this place, alright, why did I have to refresh? I thought this thing is on live server and autosave. it's actually on autosave. Okay. So let's start with this. Let's start with this now. Let's start with this to learn HTML. To learn CSS. In this our guideline, we have have the box model, CSS units, flexbox, grid, positioning, and transition. Okay, so let's just start with a couple of things for us to be able to appreciate what we want to do right now. Remember, I told us something. I told us that in HTML we have the block elements and inline elements, right? Now, block elements are elements that occupy an entire paragraph. All right. Examples of block elements are your div, your paragraph, your section tags. Those are examples of block elements. Okay, examples of block elements. And okay, another thing, let me teach us. This is how you write a comment in HTML. You open a tag, do like this. So anything I write in between here this is a comment. Now, a comment is a line of code that is not usually interpreted by your compiler or your browser, depending. Are we together? All right. So that stuff you have there is a comment. Now, examples of block elements. You can always find out more for yourself. Examples of block elements, we have the div, the paragraph, we have the main, we have the section, we have the list. The list. So these things are examples of block elements. We also have inline elements. We have inline elements. All right, examples of inline elements are span. We have the anchor. Okay. We have the inputs. The inputs. We saw yesterday that input is also an inline element. We have the label and all the rest. So these are examples of inline elements. Okay, so you can see that here. We can see that I have home, about, contact, and blog, right? Oh, please, who is playing that video? You should pause. You can pause it. No. Okay. So we can see that we have home, about, contact, and blog. They are all on the same line. Okay? Do you know why? It's because by default, the anchor element is an inline element. Are we together? Are we together? So now, let me further explain what we mean by that thing being an inline element. You see this stuff now. So we said there are three ways to apply CSS, right? We said inline, internal, and external, right? Right? Exactly. So the inline is applied using the style attribute. Okay? So I'm going to give this thing now a display property of block, and let's see what happens. Let's go back to this place. Did you see what happened? Did you notice something? What did you notice? Yes. So by default, when I mean inline, what I mean by that is that those properties by default does not assume an entire paragraph. So, and it does not have a display of block. Rather, it has a display property of what? Inline. Okay? So inline means stacked together in the same line. So I just used one CSS property called the display property, and it is used to define how you want your HTML elements to be displayed. Okay? So this is how you write CSS. The first thing here is the CSS property, followed by a colon, and then followed by the value of that CSS. Okay? Are we together? This is how you write CSS, inline CSS. Now, if I want to specify another CSS property, now this is a home, right? Right? It's actually a font. It's just a text. There are a whole lot of things we can do to that text, right? We can change the font color, right? We can change the font size, right? Right? We can change the alignment of the text, right? Exactly. So it is called typography. Inside here, I think there is a place where we have typography, right? Huh? Okay, number 14. Where is it? Is it number 4? Where is it? All right, so yeah. Look at it here. Typography. We have font, color, text alignment. So those are some of the CSS properties that we can do. So we can actually change the color of that home. Let's start with the home first. I can specify a CSS property known as color. All right. If I say color red and I go to tab, it has changed it to red. Did you see? Are we understanding some things? Now, if I do something like text decoration, there is a property known as text decoration, and I give it none. That underline will automatically go off. Do you see? That underline has gone off automatically. All right? So that's another CSS property. It's known as text decoration for removing underline. Now, let's assume that you know that there are tons of CSS properties, right? You inserted these things and you saw that they are not looking how you want it to be. Now you have you now have an insight that, okay, I can actually remove this underline, right? But you may not know exactly, you may not remember exactly that it has to be text decoration. So what you just do is, how do I remove underline from a link? You understand? So by the time you use that text decoration like 5 times, next time you will remember that it's just text decoration, so you don't need to browse it again. You get? So that's why I'm telling you that you shouldn't force yourself to write, like have everything I'm writing right here in your head currently. The reason why I can remember them very vividly and efficiently is because I've been working with this thing for a very long time. You understand? You now as a beginner, it will just take you some time. You will be doing mostly research for you to be able to do one thing. You get? But now with time, when you've understood, okay, this is actually how it works under the hood, it will now reduce your time of this thing, research. So this is another thing you can actually do to that stuff. Another thing you can as well do there is you can give it a border. Let me say border 1 pixel solid green. If I give this thing a border now, look at what happens. Do you see? It gave it a border around that stuff. All right. Another thing I can actually give, I'm the one that specified the green. I could as well give it a pink or something else. It has changed. The color has changed. I could actually give it any color of your choice. You can just give it. It must not be that. So I've given it a pink color. All right. So let's leave it as green. That green is very much visible. Another thing I could do is I could determine the width of that thing. If I give it a width of 200 pixels, let's see what it will. Do you see something? It has adjusted the width. Exactly. So now there are in terms of okay, for me to introduce width, it means that we have gone into the box model where we talk about width, padding, border, and margin. But we are coming there. let me just illustrate something. There is an option. Let's assume we don't really want, we just want the border to size only the text. Are we together? Now let's say this thing now may grow. Let's say it's not just home that we want. We want the text to actually grow, but we want the border to grow alongside the text. So let's say we have, instead of home, let's say we have click here to go to the home page. Now look at what happened. Because I gave it a definite width of 200 pixels, it got to that point and it broke down to the next line. Are we together? Now let's assume we want that width to grow alongside. There is a property known as fit content. Do you see what happened? So this property of fit content will allow the text to keep growing as much as it wants until it gets to the end of the visible page before it will now break to the next line. Are we together? That's the meaning of that property, fit content. All right, so another thing I can actually give, another CSS property I can give to that stuff is I can actually give it a background. I could actually give it a background color. It is written like this, background color, let's say blue. If I give it a background color of blue, look at how it looks like. Click me to go to the home page. All right? Now, since we are also talking about styling, you know that it doesn't really make sense because you cannot see this thing very well. There is no contrast. You can't have a red as a foreground to a blue background. So, what color can we give to that stuff to make it much more visible? White, right? So now, for you to be able to specify a color for this same element, you give it the color property. I could just say color white. And once I do that, it changes to white. Do you see? It becomes much more visible. Are we together? All right. So now, let's go over to the box model in terms of margin and padding. So there's what we call margin and padding. Okay. Yeah, text align means the position of that. Okay, look at what text align means now. For me to be able to express, for you to be able to see the effect of text align, we have to give it a definite width. So let's give it a width of 500 pixels instead of fit content, right? So let's give it a width of 500 pixels, and let's see something. All right. So this thing now has a width of 500 pixels, which is almost my entire screen width. All right. So let's now apply the text align property. Do you see the effect now? Do you see it? But if I go back and do fit content, automatically what you are just saying is assume the width of the content, right? So it will be difficult for you to see that you applied a property of text align center to this thing. Do you see it now? Because by default, you are saying that the width should just be, it should fit to the content of that element. Are we together? All right. So that's what it does. Now, let's add some padding and margin to that stuff. If I do margin 20 pixel, what this thing means is margin, we have margin left, margin right, margin top, and margin bottom. Okay? So once I do a margin of 20 pixels, automatically I am applying margin to both top, bottom, left, and right. Okay? So let's see what that stuff does. Look at it. It has applied a margin of 20 pixels to this stuff. automatically. Now, now there is a difference between margin and padding. Look at what that 20 pixel means is the distance from here. You see where my arrow is? All to this point is 20 pixels. Do you understand? The distance from here to here is 20 pixels. The distance from here to here is 20 pixels. But now, the thing is, you say, okay, if the distance from here to here is 20 pixels and the distance from here to here is 20 pixels, the distance from here to here is not 20 pixels, right? Right? Okay. Now, for you to actually understand that it gave this thing a margin of 20 pixels, let me isolate this particular anchor now. Okay, let's give this nav bar a border of, let's give it a border of red. Okay, and let's give it a width. By default, it will just assume the entire width. Let's give it a width of fit content so that we'll be able to see if width. Now, do you now see? Do you see that the distance, it has equal distance from here to here and equal distance from here to here? Do you understand? That is that margin we are talking about. The reason why you didn't see it before was because by default, the parent element, which is that nav, was getting all the way to this point. So now that I have given it a border, you can see that there is actually a distance from here to here, distance from here to here, and it is the margin. So the margin is the distance outside that relative to another element. Okay? That's the meaning of margin. The distance outside that element relative to another element. Padding is the distance inside the element itself. Are we together? All right. So if I give this, let's give this anchor tag a margin. Let's give it a padding rather. Let's give it a padding of 20 pixels and let's see what it looks like. Do you now see? It gave it a distance inside, top, left, okay, top, right, bottom, left. That is it. Okay, so that is that. Still on that, there is also a CSS property known as border radius. Now let's say we want to give this in a border, we want to give it a rounded edge, a rounded corner, all right? If we want to give it a rounded corner, we use the CSS property known as border radius. Now, by the time you start coding CSS, it will get to the point that you can actually do graphics design with code. This thing you are doing graphics design, that you are using your mouse to be clicking and dragging stuff. Under the hood, it is code that is running. Do you know that? So basically, you can do a graphics, like if you understand, there's a point you understand CSS, you can do graphics with CSS. You can even do animations with CSS. This GIF, this image format known as GIF, you do it with CSS. CSS is a very powerful language, actually. So let's do some kind of, let's add a border radius around this stuff. It is written as border radius, let's say 5 pixels. If I give it a border radius of 5 pixels, look at, you can see that it now has a rounded edge, right? So that is what border radius can do for you. It can give you a rounded edge. Okay, so I think I was able to explain that stuff properly. So that is, first of all, this is an inline styling. We did an inline styling, and I mentioned that inline styling is achieved using the style attributes. Are we together? Are we together? Now, let's move over to the internal styling. Okay? Internal styling is done using the style tag. So there is a style tag in HTML and it's written as style, just style like that. Okay? Now, let's now learn how you write CSS. CSS has a specific convention. Remember I told us that there are how many ways of selecting CSS? You can select CSS by element, right? You can also select it by class, right? You can select it by ID. You can as well select it by nChild, right? All right, so cool. This is how you do CSS. If you are selecting CSS by element, you write the name of the element, then followed by an opening and closing curly braces. This is the convention. This is how it works. Element, then opening and closing curly braces. You now write all the CSS properties that you want for that particular element. Now, let me remove all these styles that I did here already, that I wrote here. I'm going to delete them, and I'll also delete this one. All right, so, okay. Let me change this thing back to home. I'll change it back to home. Cool. So this is what we have. Why does that home still have any this thing? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. That's good. So that is why that stuff was shining red. I was actually trying to find out why it was shining red. Okay. So we've gone back to this place now. Watch. The question should be, I want to start this nav now. How do I exactly target this nav? That's the number one question you ask. How do I target this section known as the nav? Now we have how many ways of targeting this thing? We can target it by the elements, right? We can target it by the class name. We can target it by the ID name. We can as well target it by the nChild property. So I'm going to first of all target this thing by the tag name, which is nav. So I'll just within this block, this style block here, okay, I'm going to write nav, and I will do opening and closing curly braces. And for now, nothing is there. I'm going to give that background. I'm going to give that nav a background of gray. I'll give it a background of gray. Now, one good thing about VS Code is that VS Code can actually help you. It has a color picker, so you can be very precise with the color. All right, so look at what it gives me. It gives me the RGB value, the red, green, blue value. In computing and in computer, colors are defined by their RGB values. You can always find out better. So this is what we have. We have a nav with a background of black. Okay? So we have started something serious. We started doing something serious. Now, okay, that's good. Actually, there is a difference. Background lets you to specify other things. Okay? Like it helps you to specify other things. Since it was only the background color that I added, okay? Since it was only background color that I added, I could just use background color and it will give me the same thing. It will just be the same thing. But then, there is actually a difference between background color and... Now, look at what it means. You can see that this is background hyphen color. So, color is inside background. You get? It's just like when you come to font, you have font size, right? Font family. Font face. Okay. Font style. No, font size, font family, all right? Now, you can specify all those things in one line using font only. So when you write font, colon, it has a way it comes, actually. I think the family should be the first one, followed by the size, followed by both the color and everything, the way you want it to be, you get? So that when you use background, it means that you want to specify more than one property. So since it's just the color that I need, I will just use background color, all right? Now, there is a selector known as the star selector. What this star selector does is it selects every single element. You use it to apply a default CSS styling to all your HTML elements. Okay? Now, if you watch here, you can see that there is a margin around that nav, right? There is a margin, there is a small margin here, there is a margin here, and also there is a margin from here to here, right? So by default, most of the times, you wouldn't want that pre-formatted margin. So you just don't want it to have that margin. So how you do that is by using the star selector and giving it a margin of 0. Once you give it a margin of 0, look at what happens. Do you see? It removes any default margin for you. You can as well give it a padding of 0 just in case. You give it a padding of 0. You give it a box sizing of border box. So these things now are, once you do this, it will remove anything margin and padding. So you know that if you are inserting an element, you are the one that will insert both the padding and the margin for yourself. Alright? So that is that. So I just targeted this nav and I gave it a background color of that color. So I will also specify a color property of white. Now, you specify a color property for a parent element. Alright? So what this thing means is anything inside the nav tag should have a color of white. If I tab and what's going on? It doesn't have the color. Okay. It didn't show white. Let me do something. Let me just type something here. Nav. Did you see something? Now, it didn't apply that white color to the anchor tags. Why? Because the anchor tags on its own have a special, like it comes specially. You get? It comes pre-formatted. Are we together? It comes pre-formatted. When I put a decoration of text decoration none, that is when it will remove all this blue color, underline, and all the rest. You get? So by default, since the anchor tag is a link, it comes pre-formatted. So I could just come here and I will target the anchor tags, all the anchor tags, and I will say text decoration none. All right. So it has actually removed those underline, and I could as well specify that the color should be white here. So once I do that, it will change to white. All right. So let me remove this. Okay. What do you want to say? You're going very far. That thing you're talking about is called CSS specificity. Okay? I will still touch it actually. I will still touch it. Look at what you are asking. Now, remember I told us there are about how many ways to apply CSS. We can apply by element, right? We can apply by class. We can apply by the word ID. Now, these three things has what is called specificity. I can target one single element differently by these different ways, okay? And apply the same properties to them. Now, there is one that has the most precedence, okay, in terms of ranking. ID comes first, followed by class. Are we together? Followed by the element. Now, look at what I mean. Look at what I mean. If I come here, I have this anchor tag. I gave it a color of white, right? Now, I'm going to give these anchor tags now. I'm going to give them a class name, a class of anchor. Okay, I'll give all of them a class of anchor. Watch. Now, I want to target these elements by their class name. I'll use dot, then anchor. I'll give it a color of red. Let's see the one it will obey. Do you understand? That's the point. Do you see that it obeyed the one that has a color of red? Now, wait, let me cut this thing and put it before the anchor. Let's see. It is still shining red, right? Okay. Now, this same thing that I gave a class of anchor, let me give it an ID of link. I'll give it an ID of link. Now, ID is actually unique. ID is meant to be unique, all right? ID is meant for unique identification. Okay, let me give this thing link 1, and let me give this one ID of link 2, and this one an ID of link 3, and this one an ID of link 4. So I'm going to target these whole IDs using this link 1, comma, link 2, comma, hashtag link 4. All right, and I'll give it a color of what? What color do we give it to? Green. Now let's see which one it will obey. Green. Do you see? So ID comes first. ID has the highest ranking. You get the point? After ID followed by class. After class followed by the element. Now, okay, let's now give it an inline styling. Let's give this one an inline styling. Let's see. Let's give it an inline styling of color pink. Okay, let's give all of them an inline styling. What happened? Okay. So what does it tell us now? Yes, so the inline is the closest. The inline styling is the closest to that element. So it means that it actually starts from inline, ID, class, and element. You get? So that is CSS specificity for you in a nutshell. So we just covered CSS specificity. Now, this thing, okay. About what? About padding. Okay. Inline ID. Okay, I'm coming. Class. And what? Elements, right? Okay. So padding is the distance outside an element. Specificity. Yeah, CSS specificity. But margin is the space outside an element, while padding is the space inside that element. Okay. So now we can see home, about, contact, and blog. I want to change the look of that font. I don't like it. So I will use the font family to do that. Let me just remove all this inline styling. I don't need them. Okay. So I'll be. Now there's what we call multi-selecting. I can select multiple things at the same time and perform an action on them. VS Code allows me to do that. All right. So I will hold my Alt key and I will select everything. I've deleted all those things all at once. My cursor is on 3 places at the same time. I can be typing at 3 places at the same time, and it will be applying those effects together. Alt, just hold Alt and then select the multiple places that you want to. It's called multiple select. You use the Alt property, you hold your Alt key, and then click wherever it is you want your cursors to select. All right. So it has gone back to green. which is the ID. It means that we give it an load. Let's just remove this ID of green. So we should have a white now. It has not reloaded. That's why it's still shining green. I don't know why the live server is slow. It's not supposed to be this slow. Why is it shining red? Okay, this one has red. Okay. Should be white actually. Okay. So we want to change the font family of this home, about, contact, and blog. So we'll use the font family property. So I'll use Arial sans serif, held vertical. What this thing means is the first thing it targets is Arial. If you don't have Arial installed on your system, it will switch to held vertical. If you don't have this, it will switch to sans serif. Oops. All right. So it has changed the font family, right? That's the appearance of that font, right? So another thing is, I'll give a padding to this my nav. I'll give it a padding of 20 pixels. All right. So as you can see, it now has some spaces around it. Okay. So that's that. Now remember, I told you this padding of 20 pixels, what it actually means is you are giving a padding of top, right, bottom, and left. Okay? I could actually be specific and say padding top. Assuming I want padding top only. Do you see? It gives you a space to the left only. I could as well say padding left. Now there is a way I can specify it together. Look at how to do that. The first one, look at it, goes clockwise. Okay? That's why I said top, right, bottom, left. Okay? So I could say 20 pixel, 0 pixel, 0 pixel, and 20 pixel. What does this mean? Left, 20 pixels. So let's see. Cool. Do you see? It gives you exactly that. If I want bottom, this is top, this is right, this is top, this is right, and this is bottom. So if I need bottom as well, I could just say 20 pixel here, and it will also give it. So if I want to apply 20 pixels to everything, I could just say 20 pixels, and it gives us 20 pixels. All right? So we've succeeded in covering everything about typography. That's all about typography. Okay, there's another typography property known as line height. Just like in MS Word. This thing is just like in MS Word now. Look at this thing. I can change the line height property. Line spacing. Do you see? If I give it a 1.0, it will make it to come closer. If I remove space, look at this. It becomes jam-packed, right? For some of us that make use of MS Word to do some of our documents, if you give it a line height of 2.0, it becomes bigger. Okay? Let's say you are doing your project. They will tell you use a line spacing of 2. Actually, in CSS, it is called line height. You can also specify the line height property of an element. So let's assume that we have a main section where we have a paragraph tag, and we have some lorem 30. Okay, so we have some. Okay, cool. So we have we have a body. This is the body of our HTML document. All right. Now, I don't just like this default font. I don't like this font. Let me give it the same font that I gave to the nav. What was that? Font family, Arial, held vertical, sans serif and all the rest. Now, this is where this star selector comes in handy. By default now, I want all the text in my HTML document to have this Arial, Helvetica, and sans serif font. So I'll just cut it and put it here. Okay, if I go back, it has changed it. So everything by default will have this font property, except I specify a different font. All right, for that stuff. Okay, so this body, it is not good that it's starting at the very, like it has a zero margin, like you can see now. So it's not good. What can we do? We can give it a padding, right? So let's target. So someone should give me an idea. How do I target this p tag? How do I target it? You said? By the element. What if I had more than one p tag? Let's say, okay, I have a different p tag. I don't want to target all the p tags. I just want to target it differently. Okay, so let's give it a class. What should be the class name? Huh? So talk to me now. No, just say a descriptive name that will help you. That's a long name. It should just be a short. You can just do p_1. That's paragraph 1, right? So I could just give it a p_1. All right. So I have a p_1. I'll come here and I'll just do .p_1, and I'll say, let me do line height first. Line height of 1 pixel. Let's see what it will look like. Did you see something? That's the second paragraph now. I didn't do anything to it. I did not add any class to it. If I add the same class to it, they will become jam-packed. Do you see what that line height does? All right. So I could actually give it a line height of 16 pixels. Let's see what it looks like. All right. So 16 pixels still looks jam-packed. Could give it a line height of 24 pixels. So I think this one is okay. This line height of 25 pixels is just fine. Okay, so let's give it a padding of 20 pixels. All right. This is good. This is good. Now, okay, I think this is just okay. All right. Let's specify some headings. Let's say this is H1. Let's use a H1, paragraph 1. And let's give a H1 again. Paragraph 2. All right. Okay, now watch. Paragraph 1 also does not have any margin, right? It's starting from that. Meanwhile, that H1 is too big. Let's make it a H2 so that it will be lesser in the size. Although you can as well directly specify the size of the element you want, irrespective of it being H1 or H2. All right. Okay. So I think it's much more smaller. So what I can do is I'll just put this thing within this tag. I'll put it within here, and I'll put it within here, so that this element H2 is a child element to p tag. All right. When I mean child element, I mean that it is embedded inside p tag. Are we together? Exactly. That's what I mean by that. So automatically now it will also have that padding, because it's inside a p tag that has a padding property of 20 pixels. What happened? The padding went out. Okay, let's check again. Let's refresh. Okay. Wait, let me remove this thing from here and put it here. Ah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's removing the padding. Okay. So let's take this one out too. Let's take it out here. All right. Okay. Now you can see that when I put that H2 inside that paragraph, it removed the pattern that was there before, right? I wasn't the one that did it. Most times you'll be encountering some of these things when you are coding. You apply an effect and you will not see it reflect. You get? This is why you need to be very careful to really understand how CSS works. So in this case, what I will just do is, since when I put it inside that P element, the thing removed the padding, I'll just to save myself stress, I'll just give the H2 a padding of 20 pixels as well, so that we will not have any issue. We are just on the same page. You understand? So, but if you watch now, it made the distance from this paragraph 1 to this body is now too much. Okay, you can see it's now too much. So it's not actually okay. It's not supposed to be like that. So alternatively, what do you think we can do? We could remove the padding of this one, the padding top of this. We can give that paragraph itself a padding top of let's say 5 pixels, so that it can push up a little bit. Do you see? It came up a bit. We can even remove the padding top and just give it a padding top of 0 pixel. Now, for you to really appreciate this thing better, let me give it a border, and this one, let me give it a border, so that we'll understand, we'll really understand what we are doing. Okay, fine. Look at this is when you now know that there is a padding and there is a margin. So you can see that it's only this paragraph that has a padding top, right? Padding top and padding bottom. If I give this, it's only the H2 that has a padding top and padding bottom. If I comment out this thing, let me take it out. Do you see that this one now has its own padding as well? Do you see? All right, so let me bring it back. The padding has gone out. Now let's demonstrate margin. Let me give this one a margin of 20 pixels, so that you see what will happen. What did you notice? What did you now notice? What's the difference between padding and margin? Yeah, margin is the exterior, like you said, the external space. You get the space around, whereas padding is the space within, inside. So you can see that's the difference. Okay, so let me remove that margin. All right, so I take it out and we are good. So okay, so but most times whenever I'm styling something, I like putting borders around so that I'll be sure of where I'm working on. You get the point? I use that border to be able to identify which particular element I'm actually working on. All right, so that's that. Enough of this internal styling. Let's head over to external styling actually. Now, it's just the same thing. The only thing there is that you have to use the link attribute, and then you specify a href. Okay? The link attribute and a href. So I could just say style.css. All right? I could do style1.css. Now, what this thing means is you are using this line of code to link your external style sheet. Are we together? Now, if you are working on different projects, if you are working on a real-life project, you are not going to be using an internal styling. Internal styling is just used for achieving just a very small styling for maybe a particular portion of your document. You get? But when you want to style the entire project, you use an external style sheet. So using this line of code on line 7, where we have link rel equal to style sheet and href equal to style_1.css, what we'll just do is we'll create a file known as, okay, I already have a file called style.css inside a styles folder. So I'm going to create a style_1.css. Okay, now if I come back here, it will not find this thing. Why? Because I created a folder. So this styles_1.css is inside a folder. So I have to specify that parent folder. Okay, so I'll do styles /. So you can see now, when I wrote that styles /, it was able to find this styles_1.css. I will now cut this whole styling. I will cut all this style and paste it inside style1.css. Okay, let's go back to this thing. Fine. You can see that there is no, all those properties has gone out, right? All those styling has gone out, right? So if I go back to my external style sheet, I'll paste it here. That's all. And it will all come back. The external styling. Okay. What I just did there is, how you do your external styling is, you just create a file that has an extension of .css. Okay? You create a file that has an extension of .css, and then you make sure you know where you save that file. Now, I have a subfolder. I didn't put it in my root when I mean root directory is this place where I have this my document for portfolio_clone.html. I did not create, just like, you know that we have inside this look, let me explain it like this so that people will understand better. Now, watch what I'm talking about. You see that here we have, okay, I can't, it seems I cannot zoom this. But see, this is about.html. You get? This is blog.html. This is contact.html. But there is no style_1.html here. Okay? Here is my root folder. Okay? Now, that style_1.css is inside this folder called styles. So when I open styles, this is where I find style_1.css. You understand? So I have to specify that that styles_1.css is inside this styles folder. Alright? That's what I did there by using this link tag rel style sheet href. Href is just the location of where your style sheet is. It is inside the styles/style_1.css. So
but you can also create a folder just like you created HTML databases. You can create let's say style, let's say the folder name is styles. Style. You cannot create a new file under that styles, right? Then the new file now will be style.css.
that's what we did.
Yes. I mean, if you can you go back to your
Is it to the folder? Okay, to VS Code. Now, this is that styles folder. That's why it has an arrow here. When I click it, you will now see style.css. Do you see? Now, do you see the path? Now, look at the path name of this thing. It says soki/html basic/styles/what? Style_1.css. If I come to this place, you see what it has. It has HTML basic/blog.html. Do you understand? We have HTML basic/about.html. So you see that about and blog are on the same directory. You get? Now, styles1.css is not on the same level with blog and about. it's inside a folder. So it's compulsory that you must specify the parent folder for you to be able to access the child document. Are we together? I know it's a whole lot to digest, but that's just what it is. All right? So, let's continue. We've understood how to target an element by the ID and also by the class. Okay? And also by the class. So, let's do a couple of other things. Let's go back to our style 1.css and let me remove all these borders. I don't need them. So this is how you comment in CSS. How you comment in CSS is different from how you comment in HTML. Now, if I press to easily insert a comment, just press Ctrl// on your VS Code. It will insert or remove a comment for you. When I mean Ctrl//, this is what I mean. Ctrl plus this character, /. Alright, so Ctrl// it will insert a comment for you. So anything you type inside here becomes a comment. Alright, so most times when I'm working on my document, I like putting this border 2 pixel solid red, just to be sure that I know what I'm doing and I know where I'm targeting. So once I'm done, I'll just comment it out. Alright, now I have commented it out and we are good once again. So there's something we are going to do here. We are just going to add a little. Now there is a HTML attribute known as title attribute. It gives you a tooltip. Example, I want, when I hover over this home, it will tell me something like go to home page. All right, it makes your website much more interactive. I'll just give a title attribute and says go to home page. All right, when I come here and I hover here, it tells me go to home. Did you see that stuff? It tells me go to home page. All right, go to home page. Nice. So I'm going to style something now. Look at what I'm going to do. When I hover over each of these anchor elements, I want to change the color and the background. All right, making it much more interactive. Look at what I mean. Okay, now this anchor tag, now I'm going to do something. I'll set it. There is what we call CSS pseudo selectors. Example, write it down on your notes. CSS pseudo selectors. That's your assignment for today. You go and research on CSS pseudo selectors. That's one of the assignments you are going to be researching on. CSS pseudo selectors. So a good example of CSS pseudo selector is the hover pseudo selector. So I'm going to do a:hover. All right. So what this thing means is when I hover over this element, this is what I want from that element. I'm going to specify. I want the background color to be white, and I need the text itself to be the color of this nav bar. All right, so let's see what that thing means. This thing has not refreshed. All right, look at what I mean. When I hover over this thing, I want it to change color. Look at it. In a way, it helps you to quickly identify where you are. You understand? And what you actually want to click. So these are a whole lot of interactivity and styling you can give to your home page. Now, this thing looks so basic. Let me style it a little bit. When I hover this thing, I need it to have some padding. I need to have some padding and some border radius. So I'm going to say padding of 10 pixel, border radius of 3 pixels, and let's see what happens. Alright, but it's looking so big. It's looking so big, it doesn't really make sense. So I will give it a padding of 5 pixels instead. Alright, so this is good. This is good. Now, by default, this is my anchor tag. Now I want to do something. They are jam-packed. They are too close to each other. Do you see? They are too close to each other. Now, tell me, which CSS property can I use to make those anchor tags to be a bit separated from themselves? Or margin, right? So let's use margin. Let's give them a margin of how many pixels? 10 pixels. All right. So let's give them a margin of 10 pixels and let's see. Cool. So do you see now? It's a bit much more separated away from each other. Now, you would have appreciated it better. Let's give it a border of 1 pixel solid white. Okay, cool. Do you see that they are just together there? They are jam-packed. So immediately we gave it a margin of 10 pixels. This is why whenever I'm troubleshooting my code, I like using that line, border, 2 pixel solid red or whatever, just to know that, okay, this is what I'm working on currently. You understand? So once we gave it a margin of 10 pixels, look at what happened actually. Must I reflect? Why is this not a live sub? All right. So you can see it went ahead. It's kind of ahead. Yeah, actually. So that's what it did there. So let me remove this border 1 pixel solid, right? And let me just refresh the stuff. All right. So we can now see that when I hover over this stuff, it gives it this pattern. All right. So now there's how this stuff is. Let me look at. When I hover over this, it's doing as if it's affecting this other element, right? It's kind of pushing them. To avoid that, what you can actually do is, instead of giving this thing a padding when you hover over it, just give it a padding here. Just give it a padding. Look at it. You see, it's no longer doing that stuff. It's no longer pushing those things. All right. So this is just an example of what you can actually do with CSS. This is just a very, very tiny and minute part of them. Okay. Now, let's go over to the transitioning, CSS animation. I think that's okay. I've not talked about flexbox and grid. I've talked about CSS units. So far, so good. I used the pixels, right? There are other relative units such as view width, rem, em, and percentage. We'll illustrate that. Now, this is how you apply a CSS transitioning. Now, I'll copy this thing now. I'll copy it to my code. I'll just give it a transition of. What this thing simply means is, I want to give an animation to the CSS property called transition. Sorry, to the CSS property called background. All right. This thing now, as you can see, this thing, once I hover over this thing, that background color changes almost immediately. I can specify, I can delay how much the time it takes for it to actually appear. That's the meaning of that transition. Let's add a little transition to that stuff. So look at, we'll add it here. We want to transition the background by 0.5 seconds. So when we now hover over it, change the background color to that particular stuff. All right. So let's see. Okay, fine. Do you see something? It's no longer as, look at it. Yes, it delayed it. It delayed the change. So it's more like making it appear smoother, unlike the last time when that transition was not there. All right. So this transition is actually powerful. You can use them. You can use this transition to determine where, more like when you start building a response. Okay, I'm going to give us a task. A task is we are going to build a responsive nav bar. Yes, that's your assignment for tomorrow, a responsive navigation bar. So write it down, please. It's very important. Now, look at how that nav bar is going to be. Nav bar, navigation bar. Just like we have home, about, contact, and blog. All right? So what I want it... Yes, that project now is a continuation. Yeah, it's a continuation. So those your nav bar, those your nav you have that I want it to become responsive. What I mean by responsive is, if I switch to mobile, though it's looking good here, do you get? It's looking good here actually. But if I switch to mobile, I need you to display an icon for me. I want to display an icon such that when I click on that icon, it will now show me the nav bar. No, the nav bar would this time around have to be vertical. Okay, let me give a quick illustration of that so that you have an idea of how to really go about it. That's where CSS becomes very interesting. All right. So this is how this thing will look like in your mobile phone. It just looks this way. Okay. So that will introduce us to CSS responsive design, where we talk about media queries. All right. That's a whole lot. We've digested so many things. This is CSS crash course. We are learning CSS under 2 hours, 30 minutes. Everything about CSS. So, for you to have survived it up to this point, you should be very proud of yourself. You are doing a whole lot of job and kudos. Okay? All right. So, before we go, I think I'll wrap up with that. With that responsive web design, where we'll be talking about media queries. Okay, I'll wrap up with that. But now, let me show us. Okay, fine and good. This is a very nice illustration now. I'm going to show us something, and that is, I'll use it to display. I'll show us CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid. All right, those are the two remaining stuffs we need to talk about. Let's start with Flexbox. Let's go over to this place. Now, okay, so I have a div. I hope you guys know that div is a HTML element, though I did not mention it yesterday. So I have a div. Now I have a child div. Okay, I'll say this is block 1. I have another div. This is block 2. Now, in VS Code, if you want to copy an entire line, you see where my cursor is. I'll just press Ctrl Z, Ctrl V, and it will be pasting it for me. Ctrl C and Ctrl V to just be pasting it for me. Alright? I didn't have to highlight the entire line. So once my cursor is at the end of that point, just press Ctrl C and place it. Okay, so this is block 3, and block 3, this is block 4, and this is block 5. I'm going to give this div a class of parent div. Alright? Are we together? I'm giving this div a class of parent div, and I'm giving this one a class of child div. Child underscore div. Cool. Alright, so before I go ahead to actually illustrate what I want to show us, we've talked about the inline styling, right? And also, we've talked about the ID, how to select an element by ID, right? Using the hashtag. You use the hashtag, then followed by the ID name. Now, for the class, we use the period, right? The dot, right? Followed by the what? The class name. Are we together? Do you understand? Who said no? Okay. My dear, do you understand? You? Okay. Huh? Okay. Very important. All right, sir. So, look at what I mean now. As this thing, I gave it a class name of parent underscore div, right? Right? You see what? The div. Okay, the div is just a block. It's just a block, and it's actually a block element. Alright? Div, division. It's a division. Yeah, it's actually a block element. You use it to hold other elements inside. Yes, it's a block element. It's specifically designed for it to hold other elements. Yes, it's just like main. It's also like section. The div. Yes, I just said the div means division. That's the meaning of that div. Now, it is used to divide your page into sections. Alright? So, as I have that div, I can have other elements like paragraph, like list, like table, like image, like so many things inside that div. You understand? But I cannot have an image. Okay, I cannot have like, you cannot put like an ordered list now, a list tag, and you start putting other things inside the list. You know it doesn't work that way. Do you get? So this div now let me give you something. All right. I mentioned block elements. Block element. Where did I even type that in? I mentioned block elements. Look at them here. These are block elements. You can see div, paragraph, main, sections, list. These things are actually block elements. But now, there are some elements that are designed specifically to act as divisions, or for you to just use them as your parent elements. Are we together? Now, one of them is the div. Another one is the main. Okay? Another one is the section. These three elements, you can use them as a block, as a parent container. Just look at it as a container. All right? This is what you are using to hold the whole stuff together. Are we together? So that's the meaning. All right. So I said we've learned how to target by class name. And you were asking, what do I mean? We gave this thing a class name of parent underscore div, right? Okay. So if I come to this place now, let's use an inline styling just for a quick style so that we can illustrate what we want to do. I'll put a period and paste the name of my of my class. This is what I mean by targeting by class name. Are we together now? Are we together? Cool. So I just targeted this thing by the class name. Let me give it a border of 2 pixels solid green, and let me give it a height of 500 pixel and a width of 500 pixel. And let me go back here. All right, so this is what I have. This 500 pixel is too much. 150 pixel is enough. Okay. I think the 150 pixel is too much. Let me give you the width of height. Okay. Oh. It should be height, not width. Height of 150 pixel and width of, let's say, 250 pixel. All right. Okay. So I have this stuff now. This is the parent div. Now, look at, we are going to look at that nth child property. You know, we've not looked at it, right? Look at what that stuff means. We have how many child? We have about 5 childs here, right? Child divs, right? So look at what I'm going to do. Let's assume I want to target only this first child. Okay? Look at what I'm going to do. I'll do dot child underscore div. Now what you should note down is you can just asterisk on your note how to target a child div using the nth child property. That is what I'm doing right now, just in case later you want to do it. You get? So I'll do the child underscore div colon nth child. If I do nth child 1, watch. I'll say, okay, let's see. Cool. Did you see what happened? That nth child 1 means the first child. There is also the pseudo property known as last child. Did you see? There is also the one known as first child. Assuming you don't want to use that nth child 1. First child is equivalent to nth child 1. Are we together? If you now want to specify any other child, you now use the nth child and specify the location of that nth child. If it's the third one, I will specify the location. You can see it's on block 3. Do you see that? All right. So that's that for that. And let me just, I want to, okay. Look at what when I say that divs are a block element, do you see that by default they are assuming, all of them are assuming different lines, okay? An entire paragraph. They are assuming an entire paragraph for themselves. Watch. Look at, watch. Let me change this thing to an inline element. Give me an example of an inline element. Give me an example of an inline element. Look at where we have inline elements. We have span, a, input, labels, right? So let's change this thing to span now. Let's change this thing to span instead of div. So I'm going to do a multi-select. Cool. All right. So I've changed everything to span. Do you see the difference? Are we seeing something? A span element by default will always be on the same line. That is an inline element rather. And you know that it's because I gave this thing a fixed width of 150 pixel. Let me remove this fixed width of 250 pixel. Everything should be on the same line by the time I refresh. Now, do you see? Do you see that they are all on the same line, right? Okay. So that is the difference between an inline element and a block element. So, but basically I don't want it to be an inline element. I just want to use the div element because I want to illustrate something. Okay, so all right, so I have this. Now we are going into CSS flex box. That is where we are now. We are going into CSS flex box. And now CSS flex box is one of the CSS properties that we use for responsive designs. All right. Now, how do you apply CSS flexbox? You apply CSS flexbox by adding the CSS property display equal to flex. All right. So we have different display types in CSS. We have display of inline. Okay. We have a display of block. You see that span element. If you change the display to block, it will start behaving like a div. Are we together? We are overriding the default styling of that element. By default, a span element is an inline element. It has a display of inline. But when you change the display to block, it begins to behave like a div. So let's just do it quickly. Let's change this thing back to span. All right, so you can see that they are on the same line, right? So let me, inside here we have the child div. Let me specify a display of block. Did you see? Automatically it's behaving like a block element. So that is that. Now, alternatively, changing this thing back to my div, okay, and okay, we have a div. Now, we have this parent div. Once I change the display to flex, display flex, what it does, what this display flex means is, it brings, no matter, even if it's a block element, it changes it to an inline element. Are we together? It flexes it brings them, it places them side by side, exactly. So you are looking at CSS flexbox. That I like what you are doing though. So it brings them side by side. It keeps them side by side. So watch now. Once I look at what happened here, I gave it a display of flex. Everything is side by side. Now this flexbox is very important if you are working with images. Let's say you have different images and you want to place those images side by side. You understand? So you make use of a display of flex. Automatic. Remember, what you are giving the display of flex is your parent element. Are we together? Once you give your parent element a display of flex, it will place the child element side by side. Okay? Fine and good. Now, there are a little more things you can do. There is what we call gap. Gap is like the distance between the child element, okay? So if we give it a gap of 20 pixels and we go back, look, you can see that it gives it a gap of 20 pixels. Are we together? All right, nice. Now, we also have what we call justify content. This is called horizontal alignment. Okay? If you give it a justify content of space between, we have a couple of options: space between, space around, or flex start. All right? Look at what happens. In fact, it will just position it equally, like it will share the spaces equally. Okay? Don't worry. You give me, see, we didn't start on time. I will redeem all my time today. Okay? So you give me like 15 minutes. Just rest. Give me 15 minutes. I'm not even looking at your face today. Okay, so we have, once you give it that justify content, space between, okay? Now look at what you, let's see the effect better. Okay, so space between will give them equal spaces around them. All right, there is the one known as space around, between them rather. It gives it equal spaces between them. That's the meaning of that statement, space between. We also have a space around that gives it equal spaces around, both left and right. Now it has an equal, if you watch, it's around though, but now the distance from here to here is actually equal to the distance from here to here. You understand? Okay, now let's assume that this flex items keeps growing. Let's assume that we have multiple flex elements. Look at what is happening here. By default, there is what we call flex shrink. Okay? Now, whenever you apply the CSS property flex to the parent element, by default, the child element will be shrinking. Okay? If the child element grows bigger, you can see that it's shrinking that thing so that everything can enter inside that parent element. Do you understand? That's why it's shrinking those stuff. Now let's do something. This child element, let's give it a fixed width first of all. Let's try width of fit content and let's see if it will do anything good. Now it does nothing good. Why? Because that fit content is not powerful enough to override that flex shrink property. So let's give it a flex shrink of 0 and let's see what happens. Do you see what happened there? So what we are saying is, I don't need it to shrink. No matter how much the child element grows to be, don't distort the width of the child element. Do you understand? Now, if you watch, okay, cool. If you watch, it has made our website, our web page, it has made it a little bit weird, in the sense that normally this is where this thing should have ended, right? But the entire page is now scrolling. So there is how to control it using the overflow property. So it becomes more like a carousel. You can actually scroll only within that section, just like on your WhatsApp. If you go to WhatsApp status, this recent WhatsApp, you can scroll like this horizontally and you see different people's status updates, right? Status. So that's actually how you achieve that, by using the overflow property, and you give that overflow to the parent element. What it means is, if your child element overflows, what do you want to happen? Are we together? You have a couple of options. You can do hidden. Hidden means if it overflows, don't show me anything. All right, watch. So you can see that it has overflown and you can't see it anymore, right? But it doesn't make sense. You wouldn't want to put things that you cannot see. So what you can actually do is overflow auto. Overflow auto should be equivalent to overflow of scroll. Look at it here. Do you see? Now, it's also part of responsive web design. Why? Because normally, this thing now would have just, assuming we did not use Flexbox, they would have listed one after the other. And let's say we have like 100 images, you get? So your page will be unnecessarily long, which is not necessary. That is why we use that Flexbox and then this stuff. Okay. Now, this is one of the good things about, you can as well learn how to, you see this scroll bar now, this scroll bar that is showing. Okay, you see this scroll bar that is showing. You can actually style it such that it does not show. You know that in your WhatsApp, when you are scrolling that stuff, it doesn't give you any scroll bar. So you can as well style it so that it wouldn't show those scroll bars. You get? It's called WebKit. You can always browse on how to do that. So that's why I told you, as a software developer, you'll be researching most of the times. By God's grace, I'm a graduate, but right now, I am studying more than I was studying as an undergraduate, because I am now working full-time. So there is no time for you to rest. Every day you are learning new things. That is just how software development looks like. Every day you are learning new things, you are updating yourself, and you are trying to keep abreast with latest technologies. So you'll be learning a whole lot of things. The whole idea behind it is just know what you want to do, okay? This is what I want to do. Go out there and find out how to do it. As you are looking for the solution, you are also learning. Are we together? So you can actually style this stuff the way you want it, okay? Now, let me show us something. You see, this is our nav bar now, okay? We are going into responsive web design. Okay. This thing that happened here, I want it at a certain screen size. Let's say your phone size should be around 400 pixels or so, or 360 pixels. Yeah, phone size it should be around 360 pixels, okay? Now, if I want to add responsiveness to this thing, okay, I'm going to specify that at a particular screen width, this is what I want to happen, okay? Let's do that quickly and we'll wrap up the class and I will entertain questions. So this is, remember that's what I told you. I told you guys to build a responsive nav bar, right? So I just want to give an instance of what I mean by that. Usually it used to show some kind of icon that you click on and then it will display the nav, right? Okay, so how you do CSS responsive design, let's go that. You do that using, where is my style 1.css? Okay. All right. So look at, we are going to do that using the keyword at media screen. This is called media query and max width. Let's say 360 pixels. Now what this line, this is called responsive web design. I didn't touch grid. If I enter grid now, we'll be much more exhausted. So far I've covered CSS Flexbox. There are a whole lot of other things you can actually do on Flexbox. Now, everything you just learned today, everything was just more like a highlight. You've gotten an idea. Now, when you go back to implement it yourself, definitely you will encounter a lot of challenges. As you are working on them, that is when you will now be appreciating the beauty of all the highlights you got from today's class. Are we together? So everything will be synchronizing one after the other. You just need to practice for you to learn it. Okay? So when we do at media screen and max width of 360 pixels, now we want to do something. We want to say, we want to apply a display of flex to the nav bar and as well we want to give it a flex direction of column. Okay, now look at what I mean. Watch, I'm going to have nav here and I'll give it a display flex. Now this is another CSS property called another flexbox CSS property known as flex direction. I'll give it a flex direction of column with a gap of 10 pixels. Now let's just go straight. I've done what I want to do. If I inspect this element, cool. Watch. Oh. Hey, can you guys see this value here? Huh? It's very tiny, right? Okay, thank God, it's coming up. You can see it now, right? Cool. Look at what I mean by that statement is, I told you that when it gets to 360 pixels, okay, change the display to flex and change the direction to column. Are we together? Now, I'm going to type 360 and hit enter. Did you see what happened? Look at. Did you see? So this is the power of CSS and responsive web design. What it just did is, once it gets to 360 pixels, that is phone view, you understand? Change that thing to flex and make it to come down as in column. Now by the time we learn JavaScript, by the time we enter JavaScript by next week, we will now learn that we will learn how to, instead of that thing showing by default, okay, what will be showing there now will just be a button that when you click on it, it will reveal your nav bar. Are we together? When you click on it again, it will hide your nav bar. Do you get? That is by the time we enter JavaScript for just mini. Una they laugh. That's a whole lot though. That's why I'm giving you guys kudos and thumbs up. It's not easy. You're really working your brain through a lot of information. And you'll be surprised how well you grab it. Software development is something you actually learn for 6 months. You're learning it under 6 weeks. So don't you think you have superpowers? No, you guys are doing well though. Now, the reason why it's usually being stressed out like that is just so that you practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. You get? But you can as well practice all those things within these 6 weeks and you will learn this thing. Now, after the 6 weeks, it doesn't end there. You know that the learning continues individually. So, but at least you'll be able to build a tangible project within that 6 weeks. All right? So, that is that about CSS Flexbox. I didn't touch the grid. So, how many assignments have I given us already? Eh? What's the first one? Pseudo selectors, right? Okay, what's the second one? Okay, build a responsive navbar, right? So finally, you look into the look into CSS grid. Okay, now look at what you are going to do.
Sorry, sir. Pseudo selector. What is funny? Is that pseudo? PS?
Yeah, pseudo, yeah.
Pseudo PSEUDO.
Yes, sir. Pseudo selector. CSS pseudo selectors. Yeah. Meanwhile, all these things are on that W3 schools. Everything I'm telling you right now is in that W3 school. So I like what my sir here is doing. He was just following up every single thing I was talking. As I was saying it, he was going straight to the chapter and he was confirming it as well. So it's a very good way to learn. Now, while you are learning that grid, Look at the actual assignment. You pull my repository because I'm going to push this thing right now. You see this particular page? Everybody, pull this particular page. Transform this thing into a grid layout. That is your number 4th assignment. Transform this portfolio underscore clone.html. Yes, the entire page. Transform it into a grid layout. When I mean grid layout, I want the nav to be by the left. Okay? While the rest of the body be by the right. So it should be like side by side. No, it's not true. It's not true. I was joking. No. Don't underestimate yourself. No, don't. You must not do that. See, you mustn't do that. It's all, I told you persistence, hard work. Now, that 6 months, is more like you are giving it like 2 hours, maybe every day. But this time around, if you can give it 5 hours. When I was learning software development, I learned it through ALX. I don't know if you've heard of ALX before. Yes. Those people, they will tell you, you do hard things. The kind of project they give you, they bombard you with projects. 24 hours self is not enough for you. Even if you look at your screen for 24 hours and for how many hours in a week, you will not be able to finish all the tasks they give you. The reason is just for you to be able to really understand that stuff. That's the essence. So if you can give it a bit more time, I understand that we actually have our personal jobs that we do and all those stuff. But if you are enthusiastic about this stuff, there are a whole lot of things you can build with it. So just give it a little bit more time. If you were giving it 2 hours, give it more time. Don't worry, tomorrow we'll continue with the class. Tomorrow we'll have an online section actually. So if you can be able to do this one, then by the time we build a practical project tomorrow, then you will also kind of, everything will synchronize better. Do you want to say anything? All right, let's just find a CSS grid layout, template layout. Okay, this is an example of, if you